And I am seeing at this point just a little bit of yellow showing up on this debris detector. There might be just a little hint of that, but I don't see enough yet to call it any sort of confirmed tornado or anything like that. So that's some good news there. Again, spotters are looking at this storm right now. They're in communication with the National Weather Service, who in turn is in communication with us so that we know exactly what's going on at ground level with this storm here. This is Indiana 37 that you see right here. You see Ethel, you see Tazewell. Tazewell, you're good. Up to our north is Paoli. Folks in Paoli, you are not under this warning at this time. So we expand out, you'll notice that is the case here. Salem, you guys need to be on standby just in case this storm keeps its strength through Washington County, Indiana. This is the only storm that has any sort of severe characteristics on it at this time within the 30 counties of wave country that we serve. Our policy here, and part of our FCC mandate, is to stay on the air when there is a danger from the weather. A tornado warning constitutes that danger. So that's why, unfortunately, we're having to take over our 7 o'clock newscast here with live weather coverage wall to wall with this tornado warning that continues to move through the northwest part of Crawford County and the southeastern part of Orange County. All right, you see Paoli on the map. I know this is a big population center. You got French Lick there. You've got so many folks at the resorts out there. You folks are in good shape up there. The reason is because this storm is going to pass to your south. You're in what's called the downdraft part of all of this, so you're going to see a lot of rain. You're going to have some lightning. That's going to be about the extent that you see from Paoli to French Lick out of this thing. Meanwhile, if you're in Rosebud, Indiana, if you're near Oregon Springs, if you're in areas of southwest Washington County, Indiana, you need to be on standby for this just to make sure that if this storm persists for any longer than its duration through Orange County, that you'll be prepared for it to be entering into Washington County. So let's zoom back in on this. Let's get you a street-by-street view of this storm as it crosses now into, or at least the business end of this storm crosses into Orange County, Indiana. You see a town called Bacon, Indiana, along Indiana 37 here. You folks need to be in your tornado-safe place immediately. If you're in Ethel, you're in that tornado-safe place. We told you to do that before. This is a critical situation for you. Could be life-threatening. If you don't know where your tornado-safe place is, that's going to be the lowest level of your home, away from doors and windows, preferably a basement, preferably a storm shelter. I know some folks, especially out in the country, have some of those. That's a good thing. Use it if you've got it and if you're in this warning right now. And if you don't have a basement, that first floor hallway or first floor windowless bathroom, if you've got it, or at least as far away from a window as you can get, is a good place to be. Make sure you're wearing shoes in case you encounter debris, and a helmet for the kids. Not a bad idea. Motorcycle, bicycle helmet. If you can take just 30 seconds or less to get it, that's not a bad idea to keep everybody's head safe here. All right, so you see that very strong look on the radar here to our, of course, reflectivity. Those little purple spots there. Could be some small hail with this up toward the Ethel area. We've had reports in Du Bois County already of hail of pea size, but in western Kentucky it's been much larger. I don't think we're in that kind of environment just yet, but we could have at least some small hail out of this storm, up to 3/4 of an inch there. So it would be much smaller than the size of a quarter, say, here. Then we've got, of course, Indiana 37, that this storm is starting to move toward at this point. In fact, there's a brand new radar scan. This is what I was looking for here. You'll note that that hook shape is kind of back here. The National Weather Service did trim away Tazewell, Indiana from the warning. That's a good call. The storm has passed you. Now we're looking at areas near Bacon, Indiana here. What I'm going to do is take our tools and kind of just draw a line of where this storm is probably going to take a path toward, and that's going to be right over the town of Bacon there. We will take our camera view and shift it over to give you folks a downstream view of exactly what we're looking for here when it comes to the trajectory, the movement of this storm here. There we go. So Valine, Indiana here. You folks need to be in your tornado safe place immediately. Thankfully, this is a somewhat rural area of southern Indiana, the southeastern part of Orange County. Usually what we have here on this white panel is our population that's involved within the warning. Notice nothing is showing up here, so there's not a whole lot of population that's likely within this polygon, but there's enough of a risk for safety that we have to be on wall to wall here to tell you exactly what's going on. It looks like the Crawford County Emergency Management can still see some rotation in this storm. They have eyes on the ground on this thing, but they don't see a funnel cloud just yet. And that lines up with the radar data here. We still lack some moisture in the atmosphere over our exact counties right now to get enough of a lowering in these storms to get a tornado to touch down. But there's enough iffiness in that the tornado warning is absolutely merited, especially when it comes to the radar presentation with this hook shape right here. And then when we pop on the radar velocity, again, it's those wind speeds. You want to see if they're rotating or not, right? When we pop that on, of course, it also has that look to it as well. So speaking of those wind speeds and velocities here, you see that rotational couplet where you've got the green and the red. It's not as strong as it was, but it is still there, and it does still merit concern. It still merits that everybody within that tornado warning polygon be in their safe place. Again, this is Bacon, Indiana. You see Indiana 37. I know I've said that several times, but I just want to make sure that everybody who's driving along that, has friends or family driving along that, pulls over, gets in a safe place immediately, whether that be a business, a house, whatnot. If you are driving through Indiana 37 near the Bacon area, this is not good news. You need to be in your safe place immediately. The rotation is moving through, and you'll see we've got another radar scan there. The radar scans don't line up with the velocity all the time because the velocity scans come at a different point in that cycle. So I'll move this to the side so that we can at least see that hook shape once again here, getting ready to move right over that Indiana 37. This is south of Youngs Creek. You guys are not in that warning. I can go ahead and clear Ethel. Ethel, you guys not involved with this anymore. That storm has now moved to your east. We'll move the velocity couplet detector here back into place so we can see that very broad rotation. I'm going to pop on the debris once again so that we can check to see if there's any sort of tornado debris that's being picked up here. And this is a little bit more ambiguous than it was before, unfortunately. You can see some of this green and blue starting to be picked up. We do not have any ground confirmation of a tornado. This does not look like a classic tornado debris signature. Could be a little bit of interference with the radar here. Could be a lot of chaos within this storm, maybe some small hail that's trying to interfere with this just a bit here. So we're not going to call this a radar confirmed tornado or anything like that. We still have eyes on the ground on this thing, so we should know pretty quickly if anything's going to happen here. This is now moving again into southern Orange County, Indiana, and that's going to be where we focus our attention here for the next several minutes. Of course, big board here shows us that we have two warnings at this time. It's the tornado warning for parts of Crawford and Orange until 8 o'clock. There's a separate severe thunderstorm warning that encapsulates the tornado warning there. You'll see that two polygons are kind of on top of each other, and that expires in about 8 minutes or so. The current time is 7:38. You are watching Wave News, continuing coverage of a tornado warning for parts of southeastern Orange County and the very northwest tip of Crawford County. We're getting ready to lose Crawford County from this warning entirely here. That's some good news for folks in Crawford. It's almost time to let your guard down, but if you live just north of English here in Crawford County, you still have some problems with this warning that's still in place here. Again, we're not seeing a whole lot of reports out of this that anything has actually touched the ground, but we're seeing enough of a radar presentation and rotation in person from some of the emergency management reports from Crawford County that we need to stay on the air. And of course, this tornado warning needs to continue here. So you see the lightning in this storm. There is some lightning as it moves north and east toward the southeast Indiana area. This town of Southeast is in the very southeastern corner of Orange County. You see Paoli to the north. Paoli, of course, you guys are not involved in this warning at this time. And of course, the reason that we're on the air is to make sure that those folks who are in the warning are safe. If it does seem like we may be going through a cycle here, maybe repeating some information, that's by design. Folks are always tuning in, watching our live stream at different points. We want to make sure that that critical information gets to those folks as they're tuning in and tuning out here. I know that as this storm moves, different batches of folks here in Orange County, Indiana will be tuning in to try to figure out what on earth is going on. There's Valine right there. You see Bacon. We've talked about the little township in Indiana of Bacon here for quite some time. You folks still need to be in your tornado safe place. Again, this morning it's until 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. If you're in Washington County, Indiana, if you're just south and west of Salem, you need to be in your tornado safe place right now, or actually you'll need to be prepared, to be in your tornado safe place, just because this storm could be moving in your direction. There could be a new warning issued at any point. Want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what's going on with this storm as it begins to move into Washington County. We're just trying to plan ahead here so that you folks near Salem and southwest of Salem and Washington County know that there's a warning to your southwest and that you might need to take action upon that if a warning is indeed issued for you. All right, we'll put on the wind velocity again. You'll see somewhat broad rotation here. I would like to see slightly tighter, brighter colors here, kind of paired up the greens and the reds. For those of you who are colorblind, we apologize, but it can be tough to see. But what I am describing to you is a bright green shade next to a bright red shade here. But those two colors would need to be a lot brighter, a lot closer together in a more compact space to really scream that there would be more of a substance to this tornado threat than there already is. There's enough, of course, of a threat that we're on the air, of course, with our coverage at this point. We'll put on our tools here the velocity, or not the velocity, the debris scope here, and show you again, yeah, there's just a lot of noise going on with this debris detector right now, this debris scope. This is not a confirmation of anything. You want to see kind of a tight blue or green dot co-located with the velocity that we've been showing you, that rotation. I'm just not seeing that. This is more of an ambiguous sort of thing here. So we're going to go right back to our rotation here, because that's the best tool we have at this point to see what's going on inside this thunderstorm. And you'll note that we still got that broad rotation. I'm going to move this out of the way so we can see the shape of the storm on reflectivity, which is, when we say reflectivity, that's just the view of the radar that you're used to seeing on TV. Basically, anything that gets more red or purple here is going to be intense heavy rain and the possibility of some hail. Speaking of hail, north of Bacon right now, you see that purple blotch right there. This is just east of Indiana 37. That's where we could have the potential for some hail up to about 3/4 inches in size. We've had reports from Du Bois County tonight of pea-size hail. Western Kentucky has had $half-dollar size hail. That's not what we're dealing with right now. I don't think we have the right environment for that at this point. That severe thunderstorm warning that you see there for parts of Crawford and Orange has been allowed to expire, it looks like, a little bit early here. This tornado warning, though, does continue until 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time here. So we advance things along. Of course, we've got the tornado warning, and we've just lost this severe thunderstorm warning right here. So that is not currently in effect at this time. Let's back things out. Let's give you kind of the 30,000-foot view of what's going on right now. For folks tuning in to us from Louisville, this does not involve Louisville for now. Kentucky side of the river, good for now. But if you go out to Western Kentucky, things are a bit more active. Let's zoom on over there and give you a sense of what's going on in Western Kentucky. And that's where we find little batch of thunderstorms moving along the Western Kentucky Parkway corridor here. You see I-24. These had a history of putting down some pretty vicious hail in Western Kentucky a little bit earlier this evening. But right now, these are not severe. These are moving in our direction. They should be crossing through between about 9 and 10 o'clock this evening, including the Louisville area. But what I'm seeing right now is there's just not enough moisture in the atmosphere to really gear up a very widespread, large, severe weather threat. This is going to be very limited this evening. Notice the yellow swatch here on our alert day. That's an alert day yellow, saying that there is a threat to life and property, but it's not imminent, all right? This is kind of a step down, if you will. And we've got just the isolated patch of severe weather that we continue to deal with. That's for southeastern parts of Orange County and the very northern tip now of Crawford County as that storm moves on through. So let's zoom into that area again. Let's get a checkup of what's going on within this warning now. It looks like this storm is now moving through southeast Indiana, which is the very southeastern part, aptly named, of Orange County. We're going to zoom back on in to this storm, give you a street-by-street view as this begins to approach US 150, just where it crosses the line between Washington and Orange counties. You see Rigo there on the map. You've got Pearson Town. You need to be in your safe place immediately. If there's going to be a tornado, it's going to be on the very tip of this hook shape right here. This is now north and east of Bacon. I can clear Bacon. You folks are not involved in this warning anymore. Pearson Town, you folks need to be in your safe place. That's going to be the lowest level of your home, away from doors and windows. If you've got a basement, that's the critical place to be. All right, looks like we've got another tornado warning here that's been issued. This is for parts of Washington and Orange counties. As we told you earlier, it was possible that Washington County could get expanded into this warning. That's exactly what we told you about, say, 5-10 minutes ago. Let's zoom into that warning now, give you a sense of where exactly this warning is going to be affecting. This is kind of a downstream issuance of the same warning from parts of Crawford Crawford and Orange County, if you're in Rosebud, if you're in Bexmill, if you're anywhere just south and west of Salem, Indiana, that's where we find this warning. This warning encompasses about 354 people per the United States Census data here. So for those 354 folks living within that warning, we're on the air for you right now. Want to make sure that you know what's going on. It's this supercell thunderstorm moving through southeast Indiana. That's a township in the very southeastern part here, or a town, I should say, of Orange County. This storm is going to be crossing the US 150 corridor between Paoli and Palmyra here pretty shortly here. Palmyra is right here where my finger is. It's not on the map, but I know where it is. And if you are traveling between Paoli and Palmyra on US 150, don't stop. Get into, of course, a safe place at this point, a sturdy building, a shelter with a basement or a first floor away from doors and windows. Want to make sure that folks are safe in that area there. What we're going to do is zoom on over toward folks there in southeast Indiana. And Kevin Harned, you've got an update. What's going on over there?
First of all, John Boll and the news team have been working on damage reports. We have none of those reported, but what I'll tell you is the National Weather Service says there's plenty of inflow into this storm, and spotters that are on the ground see that, but there is no confirmed funnel at this point. So as we look at the storm, which has had a history of the tornado warnings, and they continue across parts of Orange and now moving into Washington County, you can see the small hail threat with that as well. Just north of the town southeast and approaching 150 between Rago and Chambersburg, that is where we would see the heaviest rain and the potential for some of that small hail. At this point, there's no tornado that has been confirmed, and we'll continue to watch that notch where you see it, very close to Valine. That is where we would have the potential for that inflow to come in, and that is indeed where the tornado warning has been issued for, and that's what we're watching. That will continue to push to the north and east. It's moving roughly at about 35 miles an hour, and as that treks to the north and east, that's the zone where the potential tornado could be. Now, we mentioned earlier in all of our newscasts that we were missing some of the ingredients for severe weather, but the one that we really had a lot of happened to be wind energy, and all of this is sort of feeding off of that wind energy. We've got that strong inflow in. This is the hook down. If we were to have a tornado, that is the area that it would be. Consequently, the tornado warning has been issued, 2 of them. The first one for Crawford and Orange, that will expire at 8 o'clock. It's extended across parts of Washington County, including Rosebud, lifting up toward Bexmill and Salem until 8:15. Ryan?
Okay, at this point, I've been looking over some of the radar data to see if there's actually been any sort of radar touchdown here, radar confirmed touchdown. We're still not seeing that. We're seeing a lot of noise here on the debris detector view, but nothing that really is co-located or synced up with what we're seeing on the velocity view here. Hardensburg, Indiana, you folks need to be in your tornado safe place immediately. You've got that broad rotation starting to move toward you. Again, US 150, we're going to say this one more time, between Chambersburg and Hardensburg, you do not need to be driving on that. This rotation is getting ready to cross a pretty decently sized thoroughfare there in southern Indiana, Kevin, that links the Paoli area with Palmyra and eventually the Louisville Metro.
Yeah, and as it keeps lifting up into Washington County, you know, Salem's a fairly populated area too. You guys need to be in your tornado safe spot as this storm moves closer in. I'm going to zoom in, and then we'll put on some of the features from the radar. Let's just zoom in first to the core of the storm, and then we'll track it as it moves into parts of Washington County. This is really where we see the greatest potential. And with that, let's take a look at the velocity. And I'm just going to show the full velocity here, and that is exactly what Ryan was showing. We see the reds and the greens. That's an indicator of wind both toward and away from the radar, and that's where we would see the greatest rotation. So we're just about to exit out or into the next tornado warning polygon, and that's going to take us across 150. Again, between those places we mentioned, Hardensburg up toward Chambersburg, that is the zone that this strong rotation will pass over. So if you were to be on 150 within the next minute or two, you're going to see this broad rotation really moving across 150, and there's no missing that. I mean, it's going to be pretty sort of significant as it moves across in terms of what it visually looks like. Now, it's not a tornado on the ground at this point, but you can see that that rotation definitely shows up in the velocity. And that's where, if we were to have the tornado reach the ground, could happen at any moment, has to start in the clouds, and then it comes down. Sometimes they touch down. Sometimes they don't. Let's hope it doesn't. But the fact is it moves across 150 and starts to make its trek across parts of Washington County. It will be taking aim on Salem. So let's zoom this out. I'm going to go back to the tools. Let's, in fact, just while we're in here, I want to put on the hail just to see if we have any type of hail that may be falling. That would be closer to the Chambersburg area. It's where we have the greatest potential for that, and really not seeing a ton. Yeah, very minor. So the hail threat seems to be fairly limited at this point. Back to the radar we go. I'm going to go to our camera view. I'm going to take us back home here. And as we zoom out, you're going to see that is the lone two warnings that we have. One, the first tornado warning will expire at 8 o'clock. We're 10 minutes away from that. And then at 8:15, the second one should expire. As we go back into and zoom into that storm, the cluster of storms moving across parts of, say, Lawrence County. This is not far from Bedford, Lawrenceport, Mitchell, over toward Medora. These are not severe. The one to the south is. And that stands to reason because it's feeding off of the moisture coming in. Moisture and instability were both limited today. They weren't zero, but that was the limiting factor. So the southern storms will likely take the bulk of the energy. That just means that while these are not severe now, they become less likely to be severe with storms going on to the south. These would have the greatest potential to remain strong. And that's what we're seeing. These supercell storms, and we're sort of getting that update, trimming back from Valine, the tornado warning. So it essentially covers now far eastern parts and northeastern parts of Crawford County, southern parts and southeastern parts of Orange, and then a good chunk of Washington County for the next tornado warning. This storm will cross 150 as it's about to do, lift up toward Livonia, and then push up 156 not far from Salem. And we'll track this storm as it moves in that direction, producing very strong wind gusts, the potential for the tornado, of course, with that rotation that we see. And again, just back to the tools, and we sort of do the same things over and over here just so we can get an idea of the strength of the storm. And you can see that we still have that tight couplet. That's where we would have the rotation right over 150. So between Hardinsburg and Chambersburg, that's where the rotation is. There's no doubting that. It's there. We have spotters with eyes on it. They see the base of that storm rotating. They see the inflow into the storm. What we don't have is a tornado actually on the ground at this point, but we continue to see this track as it moves to the northeast, and it's moving at a pretty good rate at about 40 miles an hour. So it's not going to take it long for it to jog across this real estate that's under that tornado warning. If your alarms have been going off, you've got to have a tornado safe place. Get to it. That's the lowest level away from windows. Oftentimes that's a basement. If you don't have a basement, at least get low on that ground floor. We continue to see, and this will be an area we watch. Oftentimes we'd see debris lofted, and I'm just going to go to another one of our tools. We call this just the debris tool. It measures the correlation coefficient, and I'm not seeing the indicator. Sometimes when that debris gets lofted into the atmosphere, bounces back on the radar with some whites and blues. We would see that in this area. It's not there, so that's just another sort of just trying to go through the checklist of seeing where we may or may not have a tornado on the ground. At this point, there's no indication that we actually have a tornado on the ground. It's radar indicated. It's clear on the radar that it appears that the storm is rotating. Not only can we see that sort of based on this image, but certainly when we look at the velocity, and it's very clear on the velocity. And now it's past 150. It's pretty much right into Washington County at this point. It would go just south of Livonia and just north of Hardinsburg. And you can see that it's going to take its aim just It'll eventually cross 56, but should go very close to Beck's Mill. If you are in any of this part of Washington County, you've got to be in that tornado safe place that we mentioned. That's the lowest level. It's away from windows. I'm going to go back to our camera view. I'm going to take you home. Ryan's been on the phone with some of the police and emergency personnel down there. We're going to check with him in just a second. Again, showing the radar. This is the reflectivity. Heavy rain accompanying this. Perhaps some very small hail. This isn't so much of a hail maker as it is a potential for a big wind maker, and certainly the tornado potential that is going on. All right, let's go over to Ryan Hoke, who just hung up the phone. Ryan, what do you have?
Okay, Crawford County Dispatch says they have no damage reports at this time. That coincides with what the spotters on the ground are seeing. They've seen some rotation. They've seen a wall cloud, but they've not seen an actual funnel or tornado out of this whole situation. What I've got pulled up now is the storm core scanner. Hail is going to be an issue with this storm as well. We could see hail up to 3/4 inch. It wouldn't shock me to get a quarter-size hail report out of this as well. Livonia, Indiana, hunker down here. Here comes the hail. The north side of this storm, as we take the storm core scanner off of this, is where the hail is going to be most prevalent. That's in that downdraft region. That's where you have the exactness of that purple right there showing up. That's not only just rain, but that's also hail. Folks from the National Weather Service in Indianapolis actually chiming in on that hail, saying that they saw what's called a three-body scatter spike, which means that there is hail present in the storm as it's moving through the Livonia area. And Kevin, we just got a new radar scan in, thankfully taking some of that hail out, but it means it may have just put down some.
Yeah, and that's what we were looking at. At this point, doesn't seem to be a huge hail maker in terms of reports. We haven't had a whole lot. However, many of the storms that have been previous today have put down some hail. We saw it covering the ground, southern parts of Missouri. It stands the chance that we would still see some with these storms as they pass by. But again, on the latest radar scan, it has become a lot less than what it once was. We continue to see the rotation. I'm going to sort of square up the storm with the camera view as I pan this. Just bear with me. We essentially have two tornado warnings, or parts of two. The main one sort of encompasses the storm, and that warning is in effect until 8:15. Again, that's for a good chunk of Washington County. Just get your bearings. Here's Salem, the most populated town in Washington County. We see Beck's Mill, Hitchcock, Livonia. This storm is moving northeast at 40 miles an hour. You don't have a lot of time at this point with such fast forward movement of the storm if you're in any of those communities I mentioned, and especially anywhere close to Indiana 56. Just keep in mind, you've got to be in your tornado safe place at this point. This storm continues to rotate. We see it on the radar, both with the inflow that's coming into the storm. And let me just point that out. I'm going to go back to our tools. We'll put the draw feature on. We can see that inflow into the storm. We get the notch on the back side. If we were to have rotation, that would be where it is. So that should line up. When I put on the velocity, we should see that the reds and greens are pretty much right there. And indeed they are. So the reflectivity, the velocity, all indicating that rotation still very present. That just means the supercell thunderstorm is rotating. That's the first thing we have to have a tornado, is a rotating thunderstorm, supercell. We have it. We see it. We have the hail potential on the northern side of that. If we were to see hail out of this, it would be from Bromer to Livonia. That's where the greatest potential for hail and heavy rain would be. The greatest potential for the tornado, should it touch down, would be south of 56, south of Livonia. Moving to the northeast, it's going to take it close to Beck's Mill and 56. So just follow that track. That's where it would take it. That's what we have to be mindful of when we continue to watch that push in the direction. So again, it's this general area here that we'll track. And let's just take it to the northeast. Point out that as it moves up along 56, it's moving at about 40 miles an hour. I'm going to go back to the radar view. Again, the hail starting to pick back up. That's that deeper purple that we see in the reflectivity. You'll notice that we're losing some of that rotation just a bit. It's sort of getting caught up in itself. And as we sort of bring that in with the inflow closing off, that should start to help the storm collapse just a bit. So I have a feeling we're going to see the rotation of that storm weaken. the hail threat's kicking back up temporarily, and that would be just north of 56, as we mentioned. Let's go over to Ryan. More info.
Okay, yeah, the newsroom just off the phone with the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and they're in good shape up there. They have no damage to report. Just got a social media report of sirens going off in Pekin, Indiana, obviously for the tornado warning, but no social media reports of damage either, Kevin. So far, nothing on the ground yet that we've been able to confirm this is just a radar-indicated situation.
Good news there. We hope it stays like that. Back to the radar we go. We still have the tornado warning in place for Washington County for another 15 minutes. Folks looking for programming on WAVE, you're going to see it coming up as soon as the tornado warning is allowed to expire. Until then, because of the radar indicators that we see and that the Weather Service sees, we're going to stay with this programming of nonstop weather coverage, keeping the folks in Washington County safe. Let me zoom out on this, go to the draw, go back home. I do want to point out there's not much happening here in Louisville, or really across a good chunk of the viewing area. When you look at the storms that we're watching, yes, we have what's going on in Washington County. Obviously, that's the strongest storm, showing great signs of rotation. We've got our eyes on it. At this point, not only do we have our eyes on it, but we're calling the personnel across all of these counties that are affected, which was Orange, Crawford, now Washington. There are no reports. We have people that are actually watching that storm. There's no touchdown at this point. We also have storms that are developing back out to our west along 64, not too far from Evansville, back out across western Kentucky. All of these will have the potential to gain in intensity and strength through the rest of this evening. Our chances for storms here in Louisville and along this I-65 corridor will be going up through the evening, probably mid to late evening. 10, 11 o'clock. The storms to our north at this point, this will probably be your main show. These storms moving through have that ability to continue to produce the rotation. Here we go back into the storm. I'm going to go in. The tornado warning continues for Washington County as indicated by the Weather Service. I'm going to put on the velocity. We're going to go to the camera view. We'll go back to the zoom tool and we're going to go right into that. So we've sort of squared this up to where now the warning just includes parts of Washington County from Rosebud to Bexmill, just shy of Salem, but don't put your guard down, Salem. Just because you're technically not in that warning, follow my hand. Moving to the northeast, 40 miles an hour, it's going to put it right in your doorstep. So if the warning gets expired, you're certainly going to be in it. If it or gets extended, you're going to be in it. If it gets expired, you're still going to have a pretty good storm move across you. This storm is about 7 miles off to the southwest of Salem. So it's not very far from Salem in general. Back to the radar. So that's the velocity. We still see that rotation. It's a little less present in the reflectivity at this point than what it was earlier. We had that sharp inflow earlier. It was very clear what we were looking at on the radar, and then we wound up seeing just sort of a broader area of precipitation in this reflectivity. However, the rotation is still there. Here's the latest view, and again, you could see if we were to have hail, it's going to be in this core here. We've had a little bit, generally those purples indicating where we would have the greatest potential. That again has weakened. The inflow into the storm, not as present as it was, but the velocity confirms still, and I'll go back to it, that we still have that rotation showing up, and this frame will update, should move it just north of Rosebud and just off to the west of Bexmill. These are the only storms producing severe weather across our area at this point. The tornado warning for Washington County goes until 8:15. The reason behind it is radar indicated signatures like this. When you have those reds and greens so tightly compressed together, it's a clear indicator to the radar that we've got winds going toward and away in a very small location, and that has to represent rotation. And for that reason, we have the tornado warning that continues through this time. The storm at this point, not as impressive as it was, and we'll continue to see downstream of this severe thunderstorm warnings likely to be issued. So as long as the rotation eases and continues to, and we can certainly see that it is easing when we go back to the radar view. It's sort of just becoming more scattered out, less of a sort of inflow into that storm. As it broadens out, I suspect that we'll continue to see downstream from this tornado warning severe thunderstorm warnings that may be issued. So Salem, while you may not get a tornado warning, you're still going to have the storm move across you. There's no missing it. It's just the fact that are the winds going to be how strong? And at this point, 40 to 60 mile per hour winds certainly look possible with this storm as it moves through. Let's go to Ryan Hoke.
Okay, I've just gotten off the phone with the folks at the Sheriff's Department in Washington County, located in Salem. They say they have no reports of damage just yet. That's to be expected with this situation. We've been talking about kind of the downward trend in all metrics of this storm right now, and it's starting to lose some of its strength here. And that warning goes until 8:15 this evening, so we're about 10 minutes out from the expiration of that warning if the tornado warning is indeed allowed to expire on time, Kev.
All right. Again, it's just a wait-and-see kind of deal as this storm continues to ease just a bit. What we've noted over the last several scans of the radar is there are times where it ticks up in terms of hail in particular. We've seen where we've had the dark purples sort of show back up. They fade away. They come back. That's very normal for a storm to sort of go through that pulsing up and down. And at this point, the good news is the last several scans of the radar have shown that storm sort of broadening out and becoming a little less organized. That would be an indicator, should that continue over the next scan or two, that we'll be able to sort of eliminate the tornado warning and move forward with just a severe thunderstorm warning. That's most likely what will happen as long as that trend continues. Again, this continues to lift off to the northeast. It's moving at about 40 miles an hour. It is the only storm in our viewing area that's putting down significant weather. We have thunderstorms and general rain up into Jackson County, back out into Lawrence County, northern Orange. You get out toward Du Bois, still some rain. Even some storms trying to develop down across parts of Taylor County, just north of Campbellsville. Those two just now starting to take off and develop. With that said, the one that's producing the severe weather is only in Washington County, approaching the Seymour area. Take off my drawing tool there and we'll go back in. And then I want to go back. Let me click that, and we'll go back into the zoom, and I'm going to take you back to Washington County, the only storm that is potentially threatening at this point. And again, latest scan continues to show that disruption, just sort of muddying it up just a bit, but the rotation continues to show up in the velocity. And as this continues, that too, it's there. You got to keep in mind, as we go out with distance from the radar beam, we're actually going higher into the storm. And we continue to see that rotation a little bit aloft. It doesn't mean that it's on the ground. In fact, the storm spotters who are watching the storm with their eyes, they see the storm rotating, but it's not on the ground. Consequently, the tornado warning is a radar-indicated tornado. It is moving right across or right along, pretty much parallel to Indiana 56, just north of Rosebud. And we continue to see that move north of Beck's Mill. Also in community